Not afraid to start the break. 2-on-4. The math doesn't work out. Cunningham thought about it. Kicks it up top. Boston handing off to Mitchell. Mitchell, plenty of space. This time back to Boston. Boston, whoa, moving furniture and getting the layup.
Something snapped in Indiana last night. The Fever had no business being in this game. 3-point guards gone, their rookie sensation Caitlin Clark still sidelined, and their playoff hopes dangling by a thread. At one point, they were down by 17 points, the kind of deficit that usually sends fans home early and players mentally packing it in. But somehow they clawed back, possession by possession, steal by steal, bucket by bucket. They fought through exhaustion, through frustration, through everything that had gone wrong all season. They put themselves in position for a statement win that would have silenced every critic, every doubter, every fan who had already written off their season. And then, just when it mattered most, everything unraveled. A controversial finish, missed calls.
You know, talk about Kelsey Mitchell. She didn't have a point the entire first quarter, didn't score until the second, and ended this with 38. How she just continues to be a leader on this team is amazing. What's it like to play alongside her?
It's amazing. When you have a leader like Kelsey who continues to lift everyone up, even when, like you said, she didn't have a point that first half.
A coaching hesitation that will haunt the locker room. And at the center of it all, a furious Aliyah Boston walking off the floor with fire in her eyes. This wasn't just a loss. This was the kind of ending that doesn't wash away with a shower and a day off. It lingers, it festers, it becomes fuel. And for Boston, it looked like the moment she'd had enough. Before we break down the chaos of those final 11 seconds, let's rewind. Because to really understand the explosion at the end, you need to see the storm that was already building. Indiana wasn't just undermanned, they were shredded. In one brutal stretch against Phoenix, Sydney Colson tore her ACL while Ari McDonald fractured her foot. Both gone, both done for the season.
And finally, Aliyah, what are you going to do with your prize money?
That's gonna be an elbow!
Congratulations, lady. Back to you guys.
These weren't just names on the roster, they were the guards who set the pace. The ones who dribbled into the teeth of pressure and made sure stars like Kelsey Mitchell and Aliyah Boston could focus on scoring instead of surviving. Then you add Caitlin Clark, still sidelined with that stubborn groin injury since July, and suddenly Indiana had no true point guard on the floor, not one. For the first time all season, the Fever were forced to operate without a floor general. And in basketball, that's like trying to fly a plane with no pilot. You might stay in the air for a while, but eventually, turbulence is going to slam you into the ground. That meant every single possession was an uphill battle. Every pass risked being picked off. Every dribble was a war against traps and double teams. Every trip up the court looked like running through quicksand. Dallas knew it, Indiana knew it, and yet, somehow, the Fever kept themselves alive.
Play all together is just getting better as a team, all right? But just want to give you guys a little, some more good stuff.
Into that chaos stepped Kelsey Mitchell. Normally, she's the team's killer scorer, the sharpshooter who strikes fear into defenders the second she crosses half court. But this time, she had to be everything. Ball handler, playmaker, scorer, escape artist. She wasn't just carrying the offense, she was dragging it like a firefighter, pulling a teammate out of a burning building. Against Dallas, she still managed to put up 24 points on 7 of 15 shooting, including 4 of 7 from deep. She added 6 rebounds, but the numbers don't even tell half the story. Every shot came with defenders draped on her like human Velcro. Every dribble was hounded, every possession doubled, sometimes tripled.
I think it was about defending. It's a phenomenal basketball team, inside out, guards, post, they make it hard, through. I think for us, it was about making sure that we stay focused when they make those runs.
Dallas's entire defensive scheme boiled down to one simple strategy: slow down Mitchell and you slow down Indiana. And yet, through sheer grit and maybe a touch of stubbornness, she kept the Fever alive. Dallas, for their part, came out swinging. They pressed hard, swarmed the paint, and forced 17 turnovers, which they flipped into 27 points. That should have been enough to bury Indiana. And for most of the night, it looked like it would be. But late in the third quarter, everything shifted. Sophie Cunningham splashed back-to-back threes. Chloe Bibby came in off the bench and calmly drilled another. Natasha Howard became a defensive wall at the rim, blocking shots and forcing Dallas to second-guess everything inside. And then there was Boston, battling, clawing, enduring constant contact, and still putting up 14 points with defenders literally hanging off her arms. Suddenly, the Fever went on a 25-4 run that flipped the entire arena upside down. The crowd wasn't just loud, they were volcanic. Every bucket that felt like destiny. You could feel it. The Fever weren't just going to come back, they were going to win one of the biggest upsets of the WNBA season. Until they didn't. Down 1 point. 11 seconds on the clock. Indiana secures the rebound. No timeout. The plan? Push the pace. Catch Dallas sleeping. Seize the win before the defense could get set. But the possession stalls.
Going into that third, I told her, call your number. Call your number because you are more than capable. And I think, when you play a game like this, you really just see God's blessings over this squad, regardless of what's been happening. And that's really just been how we've approached it.
Mitchell is smothered, trapped, forced into a desperate contested jumper. Brick. Dallas snatches the rebound. Now the Fever call timeout, but there's just 1.7 seconds left. Coach Stephanie White admitted after the game, "I probably should have used it at the 3-second mark." That one hesitation erased Indiana's chance at a set play. Instead of a clean look at a potential game winner, they got chaos and desperation. And in the WNBA, those small decisions are the difference between headlines about resilience and headlines about heartbreak. But honestly, the Fever's frustration started long before that possession. The officiating had already turned the game into a tinderbox.
How would you talk about the chemistry of you guys for the long? That's the third game. Yeah. But how is it? Oh man, I think it's 3 games in. I think you guys get to see what 3 games in look like. But I think game 15, game 20, hopefully that chemistry that everybody's looking for is going to be gelled together.
Early on, Aliyah Boston gets her arm clamped by Dallas's center in the post. Instead of calling the foul on Dallas, the whistle somehow goes against Boston. Indiana challenges, confident they'll win. They lose. Timeout gone. Even ESPN's Rebecca Lobo said on air she expected the call to be overturned. It wasn't. Later, Sophie Cunningham gets slapped with a flagrant foul for a landing space violation on Paige Buchers. The same type of foul Buchers had committed earlier in the game, hers downgraded after review. Cunningham's upgraded, and when Mitchell absorbed identical contact later in the fourth, crickets, no whistle, no protection, just play on. Coach White didn't bother hiding her frustration afterward. Kelsey has held her chucked on every possession and never gets a call. Aliyah is the worst officiated post player in the league. That wasn't coach speak. That wasn't coded. That was raw truth. And when a coach says it out loud, you know the frustration has boiled past the breaking point.
Last one for me. When you look into the next 9 games that you guys have, regardless of who's on the roster or what's going on the court, how do you guys stick together to pull out these wins?
I can't even think about the 9 games. Who do we have next? Minnesota? I mean, we're pretty much there. We really have to take it one game at a time, especially I think the way things have just been.
By the closing minutes, the emotions were spilling everywhere. Cunningham snapped at the refs mid-game. Caitlin Clark, still sidelined, sat on the bench clapping sarcastically at the officials after another missed whistle, which is basically basketball's version of saying, "Niner, sure buddy, great job, maybe you should get your eyes checked." And Boston? Boston stepped directly into a tense exchange between Coach White and the officials. Visibly seething. Afterward, her words were simple: "We need better focus." But the way she said it, with that edge in her voice, left no doubt. She wasn't just talking about teammates. She was talking about the double standard she'd been dealing with all game, and honestly, all season. And then the internet detonated. Within minutes of the buzzer, Boston was trending on X, formerly Twitter. Fever fans flooded timelines with clips of the clamp foul, the side-by-side comparisons of identical plays called differently, and slow-motion breakdowns of Boston taking elbows to the ribs with no whistles in sight. One fan tweeted, "If this isn't rigged, I don't know what is." Another, "Boston gets mauled every possession and the refs act like they can't see it." Even neutral fans, people who had no dog in the fight, were calling for the WNBA to review the officiating crew. The viral train had left the station and the league was squarely in the spotlight. And here's where the loss really hurts. Dallas is a bottom 3 team. They're not fighting for playoff seeding, they're just playing spoiler. But Indiana, they needed this win. Instead, they dropped to 18-15. Just 1 game ahead of 7th place. With only a handful of games left, one slip could push them into the play-in range, or worse, out of the postseason entirely. And remember, Caitlin Clark still isn't back. The same battered, short-handed roster now has to survive the most pressure-packed stretch of the season. Here's the thing, though. This Fever team has been counted out before, and every single time they've clawed back into relevance. Kelsey Mitchell is proving she's more than a scorer. She's a leader under fire. Sophie Cunningham brings toughness. Chloe Bibby and Natasha Howard are showing they can step into the void when the team needs it most. And Boston is still the anchor, still the fighter, still taking hits, and still getting back up. If this team can channel their frustration into fire, they could still make noise in the postseason. But that's a big if, especially when the refs feel like a third opponent. Which brings us to the bigger, more uncomfortable question. If stars like Boston and Mitchell aren't getting consistent calls, what does that say about WNBA officiating? Fans have been complaining for years about inconsistent whistles, but when those inconsistencies start deciding playoff-level games, that's no longer a gripe, it's a crisis. And after last night, the spotlight on the league's officials is hotter than ever. So was this just bad luck, bad officiating, or something worse? Aliyah Boston's 5 words, "We need better focus," may have sounded simple, but fans heard something deeper, a warning. The Fever are running out of games, their margin for error is gone, and if calls like these keep swinging outcomes, Indiana's playoff run could be over before it begins, and that's where you come in. Did the refs cost the Fever this game, or do you think the blame falls on execution in those last 11 seconds? Drop your take in the comments, because this is one of those nights that fans will be debating for weeks. And hey, if you want to stay plugged into the drama, the breakdowns, and the truth the league would rather you ignore, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because trust me, you don't want to be the last to know when the next controversy explodes.